Hey everybody. So welcome to our first official class. Going live is not something I'm used to. This is the third time I've ever done it. But I've had a lot of people reach out and with a desire to learn about home canning. Just a little bit about me. My name is Kelly, and I have been a home canner for well over 20 years. I think probably 24, 25 years. Before that, when I was young, a lady who took care of us, we called her our nanny. She wasn't really an official nanny. My parents weren't wealthy. Um, but she is an old-fashioned Mainer, and she taught us kids all about farming and canning and butchering. And it was something I fell in love with. And so we decided to go full force with it. As life would have it, when we were young, or younger, not that I'm old, I'm not old, but when we were younger, we also, we have a boy of ours who, before his 4th birthday, he was diagnosed with an autoimmune kidney disease called nephrotic syndrome. And so we sought to kind of reform how we were living. We kind of shifted from, store-bought cleaners to organic cleaners and using herbs and oils and things like an organic diet. We kind of just really remade how we were living. As a result, his health improved drastically. He still has this incurable disease, but it's a lifelong condition he'll have to deal with. But we really learned that nourishment and the way we feed our bodies made a huge difference. And so that really compelled me and propelled us into growing our own organic gardens where we could. Things we were not able to grow ourselves, we made contacts. So we buy things in bulk from organic sources, local farms if we can. We try to watch, what's the most frugal sales as far as, if we know somebody has a shipment of oranges coming in, and they're no spray, or peaches, we'll buy those things in bulk. And so hopefully, as part of this class, we can extend that and share that knowledge with you all, teach you guys how to network to get some of the produces we don't have the luxury of growing here in Maine. But today I just wanted to kind of go over a little bit about canning equipment and kind of give you guys the basics as far as the do's and the don'ts. Because while there are a lot of home canners, and there really are a lot of home canners, most do them on a very small scale. Small scale canners tend to do a lot of old time canning methods that are not approved and they are not safe. I may touch on some of those methods, but really and truly, if there's not a scientific backing of it, I'm probably not going to teach it here. Really and truly, my first priority for everybody is that you will learn how to can, but you'll learn how to can safely. That really is the key. Too many people endeavor in canning, read an article online and take it as the gospel and put themselves in some very dangerous situations. So first things first, I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm just going to show you some of the equipment I use, give you an idea of jars and things like that, so you'll know what are essential things if you don't already have canning supplies of what you'll need, okay? If you have any questions, you can go ahead and, comment and I'll try to answer them. If I don't see them during the video, I'll try to answer them after. That way you have all your questions answered. And feel free to rewatch the live. If you want to give me any suggestions on how I can do it better, I'm open to critique. Just don't be mean. So yeah, I'm going to turn my camera around now. Okay, so these are 2 of my canners. This is a pressure canner here. This is the weight and the gauge. and I'll just kind of, well, let's see if I can do this one-handed. To open this up, and you can see inside, that is a rack. With a pressure canner, you always want to make sure you have one of those racks in it, because you don't want your bottom of your jars getting too hot, which will cause the glass to shock and break. I don't know why it's freezing for you, Laura. Is anybody else having a problem with it freezing? Maybe if you go out and come back in. It's not showing frozen on my end. Okay, so I'm going to assume that everybody else can see this. Let me see. Excuse my phone jiggling while I type. Okay, good. Thank you, Marlene. So yeah, so you always want to make sure you have these racks. Now this canner itself, for one layer of jars, does 7 quarts. Or you can, if you look here, let me see. This is what the racks look like. You can see I have 2 of them. That one's kind of stained because it's been used so often. But you can actually, if you get the right type of canner, you can tier smaller sets of jars like pints and half pints. It allows you to do, I think this one allows me to do 24. I'll have to check my manual. One quick thing I will tell you, a lot of people try to double stuff quarts or put pints or half pints on top of quarts. If your canner manufacturer does not recommend doing that, don't do it. Pressure canners are basically, for lack of a better word, a bomb. Homemade bombs are made in pressure canners. So absolutely do not exceed your manufacturer's recommendations. This is a Presto, Laura. There are some other ones. There's one called an All-American, and it does allow you to double stack whole 1 quart jars. And I'm probably going to be investing in one of those. This is, you can tell it's kind of worn. Let me see. I can tell you. I have a page here that tells me the maximum. So this one does 24 half pints, 20 pints, or 7 quarts of regular mouth. And then the wide mouth, it will do 16 half pints, 16 pints, or 7 quarts. The other part in this, if you decide to get into pressure canning, is this rubber seal here. Every time you can, you want to take out your seal and you want to inspect it. You want to inspect the edges with both visual and sight. Your seal should always be pliable. I actually treat mine with coconut oil or olive oil and let it set and soak in, and then we'll give it a light wash with some soap. Other thing about pressure canners is you want to make sure you don't get your gauge wet. See how it bolts in here? You can see, let me see if I can get close enough. See that little white ring here? That's another seal. And you want to inspect your seals and make sure whether or not, you know, they're worn. If you see any type of damage to the seal. This is your vent pipe. And of course mine is stained because it's so well loved. But see how it has all of these little holes? You'll want to hold it up to the light and make sure, I don't know if I can get my phone to do this. Make sure you can see light through all sides. You always want to make sure your vent pipe is clear. This is another pressure valve. In a overpressurized situation, this will pop right out. This is a lock, and when you build up enough steam, this will come up and it will help lock your canner. So it's important to make sure that you keep your pressure canners well maintained. I try to keep all my pieces together inside. Normally I have my weight in there today for the video. I'm not going to have it out. I'm not going to have it in there. Laura, what pressure you run at really depends on what you're making. Different vegetables, due to the acid content of them, the pH balance in them, require higher pressures or lower pressures. Meat is another thing. You can can beans. They all have different things. Most things run at about 11 pounds of pressure. They are pretty much the same. The builds and the makeup of them are what can vary. So I brought this out just for everybody to see, is a pressure cooker. Not to be confused with a pressure canner. Now my canner does allow me the option to use it as a pressure cooker as well. This, however, can never be used as a pressure canner. The functions are different, the integrity is different. A lot of accidents happen by people trying to mix the uses of them, excuse me. And it's really it's a bad idea. This is my main water bath canner. This is probably a little bit bigger than probably most of you will use, only because when I can, I don't can small amounts. I normally do 20 to 50, sometimes 100 quarts at a time. So bigger canners are more functional for me. This does 9 quarts at a time. Now you can see my basket doesn't have divides in it. My smaller canner, it does. I have 2 baskets, one with and one without. I personally prefer them for most batches without the divides. The divides are like little pieces in the middle that will come up and they kind of set your jar in there snug. The reason I prefer not is because when I'm doing small things like jams, jellies, things like that, pickles, things that are smaller than a quart jar, I can fit many more if I don't have to fight with the restrictions of the basket. Yes, Laura, actually, I would recommend to everybody, you can see these are my canning books. This is the Ball Blue Book. This is like the canning Bible. I would recommend that anybody who can orders one of these. It has pretty much everything, water bath, or pressure can. This is another Ball book and I love it. It's also very well loved. But you can pretty much, your pressure canner will come with a book as well. And you can see there are recipes in the back. It will give you different things. Most of these books will also have a troubleshooting section where you can, figure out what the problem is and what's causing the problem. So you can see why you're having whatever issues you're having. Another piece of equipment that I recommend if you're going to get into doing sauces or jams or jellies is this. This is a food mill, and you can see there's 3 different sizes. The smallest ones are the ones you want to use for like strawberries, raspberries, things to get the seeds out. This is something you would probably use more with like apple peels or tomatoes. Although if you wanted it to be seedless, again, you'd want to go with a smaller one. It's a good idea also to have different size funnels. So I have small ones for liquid and I have bigger ones for solids. And then this is my big one. I really prefer working with stainless steel if you can. It's cleaner, less chance for food contaminants. That being said, you will need a device for removing bubbles, and almost every canner, that you can speak with will tell you it's not a good idea to use metal in a jar, especially a hot jar, which most cans are going to be hot jars, because of the likelihood of damage to the jar and then breakage later. I use this. This is a orange peeler. And if you can see on the end, I have a mark there that is a 1-inch mark. And I keep it there so I can do a 1-inch headspace. Pretty much I know my headspaces by heart now, but occasionally I'll have the kids help. So, you know, I have them measure things for me every now and again. Laura, I think this is, it's granite ware. Let me see. There you go. I go through these quite often because the welds will break, you know, and just because I do so much canning. This is a jar lifter. I normally have 2 or 3 of these on hand just because I sometimes have 2 canners running at once. You know, this is how this works is basically you put this over the canner, you squeeze it just like a pair of grippers. Or I guess men would call them vice grips or whatever. Wrenches, I don't know what they're called. Those things that they use to grab things. There you go. How's that? Sounded very womanly of me, didn't it? So I do recommend everybody have a set of these. A lot of times you can get canning kits at the hardware stores or grocery stores that will give you a jar lifter. It'll give you a bubble remover. Sometimes even a mill. Jelly bags. I forgot to bring out jelly bags and a jelly stand. I also wanted to show you a little bit about the different sizes of jars, just to show you the variations that you can have. Now, this is a 2-quart jar. I do can with them. Just so you can see, because of the height of this jar, you want to have your water at all times an inch above the top of the jar. That's not possible in this canner. This canner is just too short. So when I use these in water bath, I water bath them in my pressure canner. That's really the great thing too. Pressure canners can be used to water bath, but water baths can't be used to pressure can. So pressure canners are a little bit of a heavier investment. They typically run to be $100 to $200, where a water bath canner, you know, that one I think cost me, I want to say $39 or $49. The other thing is you want to make sure that when you put away your enamel canners, you're careful not to chip and ding it. Normally when I store it, I lower the basket completely down and I flip the lid over like this. And the reason for that is because any dents is going to chip that enamel. If it's chipped, it's going to cause rust. Yep, I can go back over the bubble remover. So a bubble remover is just basically something, here, let me just use it in reference with a jar. When you have food in a jar, you'll have a certain amount of liquid as well. And so you just take this and you just kind of go in amongst the edges of the jar and remove the bubbles. And it gives the opportunity for the bubbles that are settled here from putting the food in to come out. They will just travel up the length of this. But you don't want anything that's going to bang or dent or scratch the glass. An exception to that is if you are canning, let's just say hot juice. Now normally when you're canning something like hot juice, you'll want your jars hot. Excuse me. Some people like to keep their jars in the oven to keep them warm. I don't. I don't think dry heat is really good for the glass. I think you have more likelihood of shocking. So what I do is I make sure after my dishes have been done in my dishwasher, I'll go ahead and put the jars in there and run them on a sterile run just so they're nice and hot. And then every time, you know, I'm about to start another batch, I have a rinse cycle on my dishwasher that I can run with hot water. And it takes about 3 minutes. So it freshens the heat on the glass and they're still moist. And so that's what I do. So, but I do, when I'm dealing with hot liquid, I will put a butter knife in the jar and I do it very gently, so that when I'm ladling the liquid in, I'm not having the heat being absorbed by the jar. the heat is hitting the knife, and the knife is what absorbs most of the heat. So that's one of the things that I do. This is a wide mouth 1 quart, and this is a small mouth. I tend to use the wide mouths for bigger items, chunkier items like whole tomatoes, potato. I love using wide mouth for potato. I'll use my wide mouth pint jars for applesauce, just because it's easier. You get a cleaner pour with that. This is an older jar. You can see it's got a pretty design on it. Just because the jar is old, you can get those a lot at yard sales. Scoff them up. For me, jars are like gold. I probably can over 2,000 jars a year. And I'm constantly running out of jars because, you know, I have a high yield of one thing or another. So I'm always looking for jars. Certain spaghetti sauces, such as Classico, they can their sauce in Atlas Mason jars. These are smallmouth. They fit the smallmouth lid and ring. Now, a little warning, it is not recommended by the USDA that you reuse these jars. I feel like it's safe, and so while I will not recommend that you do it, I do it. I seal high acid foods only though, and I have not used them to pressure can. I only use, you know, the Ball and Atlas jars that are meant for pressure canning and home canning for my pressure canned items. Not that I don't feel like these would be adequate or safe, because they are an industrial jar. Obviously, they go to a much higher degree to get sealed at a factory than what we have capabilities of. But just because I don't want to be liable should somebody get sick. So high acid foods only is what I would say as far as my own personal use, but I would not recommend it for you. So how's that? This is a wide mouth pint jar. I love these. I put candied apples in them. A lot of the brandied fruits that I make a lot of liquor fruits for special treats for mom and dad. These are jelly jars of various sizes. These are some of my favorite jars. I use these for my pickled peppers. And then I have these too. So that's pretty much it for the assortment of jar sizes. One other thing I would like to address in this first thing, because we did talk a little bit about safety, is, let me just turn my camera around. A lot of people will tell you, especially old-time canners with old-time habits, that you can do low-acid foods if you do them long enough in a water bath. That is 100% false. I don't care if their grandmothers did it for 500 years. It's not something I advocate. It's something I strongly discourage. It's dangerous. And let me tell you why. Boiling water occurs at 212 degrees. You can maximize your boiling water to, I think, 200 and maybe 16. Actually, I don't even think that's right. 212 degrees is what water boils at. You boil water for 3 hours with items in it, probably the maximum you're going to get is 212 degrees. Botulism is not killed until it hits 240 degrees. Botulism is an odorless, tasteless bacteria that can kill you. Now, I know a lot of people hem and haw about it. I'm not going to allow that on this group. There will be no advocating of or comments made proactively allowing that. I'm going by what is tried and true safe methods, and that's all I'm going to advocate or allow to be advocated here, because it's not worth somebody dying. A lot of people think, oh, they use it in, you know, migraine treatment, and they use it in, you know, facial stuff, and sorry, that doesn't fly. When you are growing your own food and canning your own food, number one, you don't want to waste your work. If you open a jar and it has mold in it, chances are, if there wasn't something wrong with that specific jar, you could have a whole batch that's bad. And those are things that we learn from. But I really feel very strongly that people need to understand that there are just some things that we don't do. Meat and low acid vegetables absolutely have to be pressure canned. No water bath. It doesn't matter who tells you their grandmother did it, their aunt did it, they did it. Don't mistake luck with science. They're two different things. Just because somebody was lucky enough not to die doesn't mean that it's a safe method to do. And I just really feel like that is something that cannot be argued with. And what we're really focusing here is the science of it. I don't know how many of you have seen Emily's comment on the cover photo. She asked about delving into how we grow so much produce in our small space. Our acreage here, we only have probably 2.8 acres, of which we probably only have 3/4 of an acre of a lawn. And not even that. We live in a little cottage in the woods. But God blessed me with marrying a landscaper, and we have researched how to grow food in small confined areas, and we've had great success. We feed our family off of what we grow, for the most part, other than that little bit that we barter. So hopefully we can pass on some of that knowledge to you. I am very big on not wasting. So I hope to share some of the ways we use our byproducts with you, so that you can, learn how to maximize what you reap from every article that you process. As an example, apples. When I make applesauce or apple juice, number one, if I juice apples, I make sauce with the remnants of the rest of the apple. The cores and the peels I save to make pectin with. So we have no waste. When we make a turkey, after we have our primary meal, I make pot pies with the remaining amount. I take the dark meat and make it for soup meat and freeze it. And then the bones I save. And when I have, 5 to 7 carcasses, I'll boil them for 12 hours with some vegetables, and I make bone broth. I am really about being frugal and using everything that you can. So I hope that this class will bless everybody, and that you'll gain some wisdom out of it. I'm not seeking anything, no compensation of any sort. I just figured it would be something I just figured it would be something fun to do while we are all quarantined. So I guess that's it for now. And if you have any questions, just let me know. All right. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.